Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the planning meeting today, especially those in the public gallery and anyone watching the meeting via the webcast. To the members of the public in the gallery, I would like to remind you that this planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so there is no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future. Committee members, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs. Go to the ground floor of the Civic car park. Thank you. I'll now ask the officers to introduce themselves, starting with our legal advisor.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Polly Ellis. I'm a solicitor with the Council's legal team.
I'm Rachel Beale from Democratic Services.
Hello, Richard Lewis, Head of Planning and Development.
Rebecca McAndrew, Principal Planner Development Management.
Sarah Hensby, Senior Planner Development Management.
Paul Wheeldon, Group Leader, Highway Development.
Thank you. We'll go to item agenda 1, the attendance and apologies. Are there any apologies, Rachel?
I have apologies from Councillor Stuart Ashley, Len Constance and Veronica Gray.
Thank you. Do other members know of any apologies?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Gwyn Jenkins and Louise Shepherd.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Right, thank you for that. Declarations of interest. Over to you, Polly.
I would remind members that you need to declare to complete the declaration of interest form in the attendance register folder if you're declaring an interest in any application. In agenda item 6, that's land at Teacoke Collybush Way, Councillor Faye Jones has declared a personal non-prejudicial interest in this agenda item as a member of Cwmbran Community Council, which has been consulted on the application. I do believe there's one more declaration of interest, Chair.
Yeah, I need to declare an interest. I'm on the Brecon Beacons National Authority, who put me onto the outside body of Blaenau Heritage Committee. That's for item 5.
And Chair, I think that's a personal interest, non-prejudicial interest.
Right. Thank you for that. Item 3, minutes of a planning committee meeting held on Tuesday the 20th of August. Do you all agree it's a true record? Right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members? No. Thank you. We'll move. Item 4, which is an appeal for planning application number 03/P/09336 and its development, reclamation of former open cast workings, recovery of secondary aggregates and construction of no access road affecting public rights of way. And it was cited at Pentos, Havadaranis, Pontypool. It was a public inquiry and the appeal was dismissed. So are there any comments from members about that? I think we're all pleased about that, the way that...
Yes, Chair, that's what I was going to say. It's so pleasing. And the Welsh obviously in sense as well. I'm just glad this happened. Thank you.
I think the whole committee is glad about that. Thank you for those comments. Right, the committee agrees to note it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 5, application number 17/P/0795 FUL, proposed construction of 15 number residential units, car parking and landscaping and associated works at New Road Farm, Bartig Road, Blaenavon. And Rebecca McAndrew will now give us a presentation on this. Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair. If you just bear with me a second.
I think this is...
Right, okay, thank you. If I just start with some typos within the report, just to clear that up. If you go to page 27, the Conservation Officer's comments, that should say that they've got no objections subject to appropriate conditions. The words in those comments is a little bit jumbled, but the Conservation Officer's happy that subject to the conditions suggested, no objections to the scheme. Then if you go on to page 28, the Highways comments say, I would not propose this application from a highway standpoint. You should actually say, I would not oppose this application from a highway standpoint. So again, Highways are happy with the scheme, subject to appropriate conditions being attached. So this application was originally reported to committee back in February 2018, where members resolved to approve the application subject to section 106. Since that time there's been ongoing work on the section 106. It's almost near completion now. So in accordance with the developer contributions section 106, we're just bringing it back because 6 months have passed since that time, just to reconfirm the initial recommendation of approval subject to section 106. So the application's for 50 dwellings. The scheme remains largely the same. There are a few minor amendments to it. The key change really is at the time the original application was considered, it was proposed to put quite a substantial retaining structure along this northern part of the site. It's now changed, and basically the retaining structure would be this much shortened version down on this corner, and the developers managed to batter the land down, so there's a green slope and a lot of the trees have remained on that, so there's less of a visual impact, so we're welcoming of that change. There's a few other changes as well, like putting gates on some of these access routes down through, which are requested by the secured by design officer at the police. So again, no objections to those pretty minor things. So the section 106 remains the same, the development's largely the same. I'll just show you some photos because the developers continue to implement the original consent from 2005. So this house is up on site, so it's probably worth showing you how it's coming along. As you know, on this site we've secured quite a high level of design and quite in keeping with the character of Blenavon. And again here, this retaining structures between the houses and the backs of the houses to get the car parking. I thought it was worth showing you that. So that's what it would have been right along the bottom of the site, but actually that's much reduced in size now. Just an example of some of the houses. So our recommendation remains the same, approved subject to the section 106 and conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are there any questions? Right, I got three, I think. Hugh, you were the first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's concerning the 106 agreement. The concern I got is the original application when it was granted secured affordable dwellings and a financial contribution towards leisure and recreation facilities. And then there's been a deed variation put in because at that time the developer considered it would be unviable with those 106 requirements. But the site was actually first started to be developed in 2006, and then obviously we had the recession, work stopped, and then there's a new developer come in since 2013. So that is 6 years ago, and we're now in 2019, getting towards the end of 2019. The recession back in 08-09 was some considerable time ago. So my question really is quite crucial in determining which way I'm minded to vote on this, is would the new 106 that's being looked at now and discussed now, reinstate the original affordable housing requirement at least.
Right, thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, when we assess the viability, obviously the market's still it isn't booming, and there's quite a high level of design standards and quality on this site. You see the stone houses and sash windows and things. So I think we've accepted that it would be unviable based on a viability assessment to provide the affordable houses on this site. Having said that, the developer has built 20 of the houses to DQR standards, and they're currently in discussion with RSL for the RSL to take those over. Let's hope that will be secured quite soon. So it's these properties down here. So there would be 20 affordable houses on the site, hopefully, although it's not a requirement of the Section 106.
You okay with that, Hugh?
Yes, thank you.
Right, Steve next.
For that, Chair. My first part, because it's an old development, you're now doing a new development on there. What are we doing about the open space policy? Because under page 24 LDP policy H5, they're now putting more dwellings on that, which are more than 3. We're now looking not to do anything with the open space. Can you give me a reason why? And also I would like to ask, the accessibility into the property, is it only one way in and one way out? And if so, on the top of page 24, should we, looking to promote layouts and design features which encourage community safety and accessibility?
If I come in about the public open space, the same level of public open space is being provided on site as previously, as per the 2005 consent.
Yeah, what I'm proposing, this was in 2005, we're now 2019, so this is really a new development on an older site. So under the policy of the LDP policy H5, we should be looking to provide open space facilities anyway.
If I go back, if I just explain on here, so there's this central, I haven't got the wider plan on here, sorry, to show it in context of the other part of the site, but this bit here is a green finger of open space, so these properties would look onto this green wedge, and then this finger then carries right up through the development, and the mature oak trees and other vegetation have been retained through the development to secure that green finger. There's also sort of green space around the periphery of the site as well, going right through, so there is quite a lot of open space within the site, and that would be managed by a private company as part of the development. So we're happy with the level of open space. I was up there yesterday and it looks...
I'm only looking at the wording of the LDP policy H5. It's an old development which is now being taken up again on another part of the development. So H5 is not coming into the new scheme. They're utilising it on the old scheme. That's my concern.
So you're saying H5 sets a standard of the level of open space within the site?
No, under the page 24, LDP policy H5.
Yes, sets a standard for provision for recreation open space and allotments which be sought in conjunction with new developments of 3 or more. There is open space on the site, and it's a good level of open space, so I don't think that the proposal conflicts with that policy.
Sorry, it doesn't. That policy is one that we've looked at as a result of this application, and we are satisfied that the open space standards they've got on the newer part of the estate is satisfactory in line with that policy. It's not asking for more than what is there, basically.
If I just come in, and you were talking about the accessibility point as well. It's quite a steep site, so it wouldn't be possible to have another vehicular access because of the levels. And this is the edge of the site, and get access through down here just wouldn't be possible. But in terms of pedestrian accessibility through the site, I said about this green wedge that goes down through. There's a footpath that runs down through parts of that, so that there's a permeability within the site from north to south.
Would that route be used as a safe route to school? It would be safe enough?
Yeah, Councillor, there are good quality footways throughout this development. They're standard width footways, 1.5 metre, 1.8 wide. There are footway links throughout the site, linking one part of the development to the other on the green wedge. So yeah, I'm happy that the footway layouts within the site are good for people that would want to travel to school. Couldn't talk about the wider network, obviously, because I'm just talking about this particular development site itself.
Can I follow on from that? Would it be easy to traffic coming in and out of that development onto the main road?
Yeah, it's quite a good quality access actually onto the main road itself, and all the footways go up to the main road, and then there are footways lead in from the main access point down into town.
You satisfied, Steve? Thank you. Ronnie next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rebecca. I think we've answered my question actually now. On the landscaping, I mean, I've been chipping away for years of these developers. When they do their landscaping, they put the most horrendous shrubs in that cost us a lot of money and that make high maintenance in the years. But this is going to be maintained by a private company on the site.
Yeah, there's a condition requiring a landscaping scheme, and as part of the Section 106, a management company would look after the landscaping on the site.
Yes, thanks. So we wouldn't have to maintain. Good.
No.
I've just seen a development which doesn't come under us, and they've again put Iliagnus in there. And I said to one of the guys who got the site there, I said, high maintenance for the rest of your life there. And they'll only put rubbish in, but as long as we haven't got to maintain it, I'm happy with that.
There's some really nice mature trees on that site as well, so it's good always to use existing landscaping within a development.
Janet?
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm really concerned about the 106 money. Have we not reached the 75th building up there yet? And I ought to know, I walk up there quite often, but, you know, because it says on page 35 that on completion of the 75th dwelling that we should have some 106 money, the contribution.
Yeah, from memory, I think it's the occupation of the 75th, and that people haven't started moving in yet, so hopefully soon it'll start. Yeah.
Contribution is really important, so we can achieve some other recreation facilities within the town, which is in the austere climate that we've got, we can't afford to do it, and I really want to press on that. Was answered from residents who were concerned about the amount of heavy lorries going there, but Paul's answered my question, so thank you on that.
Are you okay, Janet?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Who we want to come in again?
Yes, thank you, Chair, for permitting me a second question. I was going to ask about the number of houses up there, because this is for 50, and there was 20 up there already, so I wanted to make sure, and I thought, well, have they put 50 in and there are other 20 so that we haven't got to the number 75, so we don't get that contribution? And I wanted to ask how far along the line we were. That question's been put now, but part of the original provision was for children's play area, and there's no children's play area now in the revised application, but there's been a suggestion for monies to be donated for improvements at Blaenavon Park. What's the proximity of this development to Blaenavon Park? How far away is Blaenavon Park from these houses? If the children are not going to have a local play area and they've been told they have to get to Blaenavon, what's the proximity?
Right, the Blaenavon member is indicating. Would you like to come in, Janet?
The park is on the other side of the valley. It's probably about 10 minutes walk. But the money that we're asking for the 106 as a Blaenavon resident and a ward council is that we have the Section 106 money that we can spend in improving facilities at the tennis courts where we can use for multi-sports facilities. And I mean, we're estimating that a region of 100,000 at the moment. So we're really looking for every contribution of finances to help us achieve this. It's well within walking distance. It's not a problem.
Who are you satisfied now? Right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Right, does anybody want to make a proposal? Can you put your mic on, please, Gaynor?
Yes, I'd like to see this approved.
I'll second it.
It's been approved with the officer's conditions and it's been seconded. So do you want to vote now those for the application? Can you show your hands, please? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? I think that was unanimous, actually. So this planning application has been approved. On to item 6, application number 19/P/0464/FUL. The proposal is for construction of a solar farm and associated works sited at Landa Teacoch, Hollybush Way, Teacoch, Cumbran. And Sarah Hainsby now will take us through the information. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Since the report's been published, we've had one late objection which has been received from the owner of land to the south, who believes that his land would become landlocked if this development were to take place, and also because he considers it to be a bad commercial project. So as I was saying, we've had one late objection from the owner of land to the south, who believes his land would become landlocked if this development were to take place, and also that he considers it to be a bad commercial project as the returns over 35 years are far less than the actual building costs of the actual development. So the actual site area covers an area of 5.37 hectares. It's a former landfill site which stopped being used for landfill in 1983. It has been decommissioned with a 1 metre clay cap put on top. To the east of the site is Cumbrawn Drive. To the west of the site is actually the Monmouth and Brecon Canal, which has a number of listed bridges on there as well. The proposal is to install 10,488 solar panels, which would create enough energy to supply 1,000 homes. This would be arranged in arrays in this kind of format. The actual arrays would be 3.8 metres wide and 2.4 metres high, with a maximum length of 40 metres long. So that's a typical display of the actual arrays and the arrangements of the actual solar panels. That's a cross-section through showing the actual height through the solar panels. With that, in order to connect to the actual national grid, there'll be 16 inverter cabinets and a single substation to allow for this off-site connection. So this is the scale of the actual substation, which is 3.4 metres by 2.3 to a maximum height of 2.2 metres. In addition, there's also 16 CCTV cameras located around the actual perimeter fence, So the perimeter fence would be 2.5 metres high, and the CCTV cameras would also be 2.5 metres high. So this is the actual site. This is the aerial photograph, so you can actually see that it is actually quite well enclosed with existing vegetation and trees. The actual development is following the field pattern that's already there, so it's just taking this area. There is actually a public right-of-way across the site, which is proposed to be amended to a separate application. The actual development is on a site which is allocated for employment uses in the current local plan, but it hasn't come forward due to the actual constraints on the site, such as the actual landfill and the contamination that's actually on there. The actual solar panels have to have special foundations that are laid on top of the actual capping layer, because the capping layer is only 1 metre deep. It wouldn't allow the normal screw pile kind of foundations going on there. So obviously any employment uses coming forward are likely to require larger foundations than the actual solar panels. So that's actually restricted any employment uses coming forward, and the proposed use is considered to be compatible with the actual industrial area to the north of the site, and it also provides renewable electricity, which is within the Wales targets for providing 70% of electricity by renewable sources by 2030, and this development would actually contribute towards that. So this is the actual site. As you can see, there are hedging and mature trees along the sides. This is actually from Cwmbran Drive, so as you can see, the mature trees that will be retained would actually screen the site from the surrounding area. This is actually a field access within the site, so this is the field boundary within the actual site, so there's actually a small screen between this site and the actual Monmouthshire Brecon Canal. And this is actually from Hollybush Way, showing that actually from all sides the site is actually screened from the surrounding area. Once again, this is actually from within the site. As outlined, the site will create renewable energy, so it's recommended that the application is approved.
Thank you, Sarah. Right, I'm open to questions. Steve?
The one question I'm looking at the report on page 47, because it was an old landfill site, and in terms of ground gases, we're now putting a heat source on gas. So what are we doing to mitigate against that? And what have we been doing to look?
Within the technical report, there has been quite a lot of survey work already been done, and there's been gas monitoring that's been going on. Within that report, the actual boreholes that they've actually done for the gas monitoring are to actually stay in place, so they can continue that throughout the lifetime of the actual solar farm as well. So the gas monitoring will actually take place throughout the actual life of the solar farm.
Okay, Steve. Anyone else? Got a question? Faye?
I was just going to ask, how near does the person live who feels that they will become landlocked, and have you got a picture you could show us, please?
Okay, I'll just scroll up through the pictures. It's not actually a residential property, it's landowner. So the actual development site is here. It's not actually on this map, it's below here. So it's this area here is where there's actually a building for the Canals and Rivers Trust. But then their land is beyond here. There's a footbridge across from Cwmbran Drive to this site, but also the actual access that's providing access into here will be maintained anyway.
Thank you.
It's not really a question, Madam Chairman, but it's of something of interest. I watched a really interesting programme on radio, BBC 4 a few weeks ago, which revealed that some European countries are now mining their landfill sites. They've realised that over the years that we've put things of such value into landfill that it is worthwhile to mine it to retrieve them. And obviously we're not doing that in this country, but it would be wonderful if we were, because we could have double environmental benefits from this site. We could mine it from the resources that contain the plastics and the like, and then we could use the site for the solar farm. But obviously we're not just that far advanced in this country yet, so we won't be able to do it, but I'm just thinking that that's actually absolutely a wonderful idea.
Right, thank you for that, Richard. But as you said, we're not that advanced yet in this country. Right, I've got Jason on the list next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The photo that you had of the site itself showed obviously a lot of trees which I don't think are being removed, but they do look a lot taller than I thought they were. Are they planned to be maintained? Because otherwise they're going to project shadows onto the panels and they won't get the returns.
The trees are to be maintained on the actual site. They're not to be removed, or there's a small enough to be removed but also replanted, and they will be managed. In terms of the position of the arrays, they have taken into account the actual tree border around there.
Okay, who next?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few questions. I was minded to go with the officer's recommendation on this and approve, but there's a couple of little things that I've spotted. A number of officers in the report saying that they hadn't had full reports. So things like photo montages, the visual impact, ecology, there were a number of different reports that were missing, so that was question one. Have these now been received and have those matters been addressed and resolved to conclusion? And the other question was with regards to the canal. The report notes that there's been an objection from the Canal Trust regarding the rerouting of the footpath because it's infringing on an area that they'd identified for the site for a potential marina to be developed for the canal. And I wonder if officers could give more clarification on that particular point and whether that had been resolved with the Canal Trust as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Sarah?
Okay, in terms of photo montages, we haven't requested those. As outlined in the report, we did do pre-application advice on this scheme when we looked at the landscape and visual impact. Because of the actual how well screened the site is, we didn't think that was actually necessary. In terms of reports missing, we have had information come in at a later date in terms of the ecological report, and they have been taken into account in the determination of the application, and there are specific conditions that have been put on to ensure that the development's in accordance with that mitigation that's been submitted. I think your final question was about the rerouting of the footpath. With that, that's under a separate application, the rerouting of the footpath. Obviously, the actual this scheme is a current scheme that we've got an application in for at the moment. The actual redevelopment into a marina may not result in an actual application or development taking place. There is potential for it actually to be rerouted again if that is required, but the development of a marina may enable the public footpath to go through it anyway. So in terms of the actual footpaths, at the moment there's a footpath that comes across the top and then through the bottom of the actual site. The actual rerouting would link into the canal up here so that the footpath would come down the side and down the side of the existing building for the marina. where the proposed marina may be. So with that, it could be developed with the footpath in mind anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just for clarity, because one would initially assume that if this scheme was approved, it basically puts the kibosh on any subsequent and further application in terms of occupying the same site. But what you're saying is actually scope for them to go ahead with the marina anyway, and a second rerouting of the footpath or routing of the footpath through and around the new marina when it's built. That was what I wanted to get some clarity on. Thank you.
Okay, Hugh. Thank you. Steve, next.
Sorry, that's the question I was going to ask, but I found another one. On page 46, with the ecology officer, the application covers land designated a site of importance for nature conservation due to the presence of rust pasture habitat. What are we doing to protect that under the Environmental Wales Act of 2016?
In terms of the actual habitat that's on the site, no habitat will actually be lost, but obviously it will change because there's going to be solar panels above it. The proposal, the mitigation, is to actually, the area of land to the actual west of it isn't that type of habitat, so it's proposed to actually put mitigation in to the actual west of the site, and that's why there's conditions on there regarding the mitigation on the actual site.
Okay, Steve. Janet, next.
Just a quick one, Chair. It says the landscape officer asked for a green infrastructure plan. Has that been requested, or is it just a suggestion?
Heather.
We haven't requested that. Obviously, we have put conditions on there, which, once again, with the mitigation, it's a case of looking at what the ecologist has said and what the landscape officer has said, and trying to ensure that the conditions meet both aspects of that. So we haven't specifically put that on, but I think the mitigation strategy and the actual renewal of that, of the implementation of that, would actually cover that aspect.
Thank you.
Ronnie, I think you're the last.
Thank you, Chair. I would be recommending this application. At the end of the day, we need to cut a carbon footprint and solar panels. We have one where I live in Henchlis now, and it's been up and running for a year or so now. The infrastructure, I'm going to put it, there was a lot of lorries going back and forth, and it was disruptive for a while, but the ecology side of it is normal. The sheep grazing there is normal, and you can see it off one part of the road in Henchlis as you look up at the side of the mountain. Other than that, it's not visible to anything. And there's been a lot of talk about the marina, if it's ever developed. Well, I have to smile there, because we had some plans many years ago when we had, I think it was 3 different plans, wasn't it? Are we going to bring tourism to Torfaen through the canal? And I've lived here all my life, and I've lived on that canal most of my life, and I can never in my lifetime ever see a marina come in there. So it's nice to talk about it, and the Canal Trust have great aspirations what they're going to develop. But I mean, let's get on with this and save our carbon footprint to start with, because I'm sure a marina in my lifetime will never see it, so let's get this started first, is it?
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. Any other questions? Who again?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll make it very quick. Honest, I promise. And I echo some of the comments that come from behind me. Just a couple of little niggles. The fencing is quite high, obviously 9 or 10 feet high, 2.4 metres, and it says deer fencing. Have we got a photo or a drawing or representation of some kind of what that's going to look like, and the visual impact of that? I know it mentions mitigation, and you wouldn't think that there would be an awful lot of mitigation given that it was a landfill site, but it does. The report also says from the ecology officer that it's a sink site, and this rush pasture habitat is also specifically mentioned within the Environment Wales Act as a habitat of principal importance in Wales. So that's been singled out for special identification under the Environment Act, shouldn't the mitigation, in my view, be a replacement like for like, to try and, if we're losing this rush pasture habitat in one area, can we not have a reinstatement of rush pasture habitat in another area?
Over to Sarah again.
Okay, in terms of the actual fencing, this actual picture is of the fencing. I know it's not very clear on the overhead there, but it is open, kind of like weld mesh fencing, the type of fencing that you'd see around school playing fields, not the chain link, but the more durable, Harris weld mesh deer fencing. It is to be coloured green, so once it's inside the site, beyond the actual trees and hedgerows there, you'd see it in that context, so you probably wouldn't see very much of the actual fence. In terms of standard height fence, a garden fence is usually between 1.8 and 2 metres high, so 2.4 metres high isn't considerably higher than the existing kind of fencing that you'd see in residential areas anyway. In terms of the mitigation, I think I've already covered this when I responded to other councillors. There is a mitigation plan in place. It is to actually do works immediately adjoining the actual site, and we will be looking to monitor what's actually going in there and the timescales of it going in there to ensure that our ecologist is actually happy with the works that are going on there.
Okay, who? Gwen, do you want to come in?
This answered to one part of my question. I think it's a good idea, and is there any financial benefits to our council? Anything that's going to help us along the way?
Well, I think Richard wants to answer that.
Just to say, different question with different part of the council, really. That's not what we're looking at, and I guess there are financial benefits for the council, but that's not part of what we are doing here. So I'd rather not, just in case I get it wrong.
Thank you, Rodney. Right, any more questions? No?
I move, Chair, subject conditions.
Right, it's been moved subject to conditions and seconded. So would everyone like to vote now for the application?
So to recommend accept the officer's recommendation with the
Yes, with the conditions. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Anyone against? Abstentions? That looks unanimous. So that application has been approved. That's the last item on the agenda today. So I thank you all for your contributions, members and officers. Thank you for your attendance. That's the end of the meeting.